pick your class and
earn your battle points.
Because it's time for the Star Wars Battlefront Podcast. Welcome to episode 192 of the Star Wars Battlefront Podcast. In this episode, we're talking about Squadrons and the future for the community. Today, I am joined by...
Hello, I'm RogueWolfe. I do content on Starfighter topics. I'm really excited about Star Wars Squadrons, obviously. I do YouTube videos and I'm a blogger with my own website. Thanks for having me, Sage.
Hello, I'm Arcros Captures, although nowadays it's more of Arcros and less of Captures, but that's to change again soon. But I basically make virtual photography on Star Wars games.
Hello, I'm SplitScreen. I'm a Star Wars gaming YouTuber, and I'm on Twitter as well. Very much excited for Star Wars Squadrons. Gonna be having a lot of speculative content on that game, and we know some more details. It should be pretty awesome.
Hi, I'm DangerCat. I'm one of the guys behind Wayfinder, also the developer of Battlefront Stats and Open Game Camera.
Excellent. Let's get started. So let's get started with talking about Squadrons, aka Project Maverick, aka the game that Rogue probably pooped his pants when he heard the news.
Don't tell anyone. I told you not to tell anyone. Well, to be fair, when I first learned that this Star Wars game will be something specifically for us pilots, I did scream for a bit, and it's not a myth that someone named DangerCat had to actually mute me for a second.
I had to turn it down by
because
50%.
As you can imagine, if you are a pilot main like me, who's been desperately begging DICE, Electronic Arts, Criterion to please give us more Starfighter content in Star Wars Battlefront 2. When this person learns that he actually gets to play a game that is, well, aimed at people like him, yeah, I shouted a lot. I think I swore as well. Yes, I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's well deserved after the 2.5 years of basically not a lot. So
Yeah.
It's about time.
It makes you wonder if they held off on the Starfighter content until... because they knew that this was coming, so they just didn't make any content.
Actually, that's one of the first reactions I got when Project Maverick leaked, and I talked to my pilot friends. I have a pretty huge pilot community on PlayStation Network, and when I learned about the leak, obviously I posted it on there. And it was like, so that's why they didn't do more Starfighter stuff in Battlefront. So that's probably a pretty popular assumption. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
I think that's pretty... what's the word?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly valid reason for it. Because I think if we do get a whole game based on Starfighters, which, hopefully at some stage might span across all three eras, then it's going to be great because we'll have a multiplayer game that's focused solely... Well, it's got Starfighter content in there, but its main focus, post-launch really was infantry combat and stuff like that. It'd be really nice if we have that and then have a whole game just Starfighters itself. It's kind of like we both get some nice, really deep and rich content for both sides of it, really.
It's definitely one of those things, like Battlefront was supposed to be like the be-all Star Wars like multiplayer game, and then it just kind of like fell off for the Starfighters. So I think it's really great if as they showed, they didn't really like know what to exactly do with Starfighters, just to have like a whole game dedicated on that. I think that's really good to see. And again, like bringing back somewhat Squadrons, like we don't know fully quite yet. Tomorrow we will know as we record. But I was a huge fan of the Star Wars Rogue Squadron games, and if it's even slightly connected, and it seems like it is just from the name of it, it's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, it's crazy how just having a name reveal just hyped me up so much. Because at the time we're recording this, we haven't seen any footage yet, so I'm super excited for tomorrow to finally get our eyes on what Motive has been working on for a while now. But just knowing that Project Maverick is gonna be called Star Wars Squadrons is so exciting to me.
I like the I'm hoping personally that it's going to be it's obviously a multiplayer focused game, but I'm really hoping it's going to be a very co-op centric game, like a game that you can play with your friends. And the pluralized title, Squadrons, sort of makes me think that it is.
Yeah, that was my first instinct too when they showed that. It was like, okay, this, at least from the name, it seems like they're going to be focusing on getting a group of a squadron. So you can have like, it would be awesome as if like you could customize your squadron kind of like insignia or anything like that. Have like that kind of customization so you could have like your own squadron in Star Wars.
Not too dissimilar from the crews in GTA in that you can customize the logo and have like color schemes for your cars or ships in this case.
Yeah, that would be awesome, yeah.
I mean, I'm part of a Starfighter squadron on PS4, the Rogue 181st, and we are a group of, well, both boys and girls. We span across the globe, and probably my best gaming experience I ever had is with these people playing Starfighter Assault in Battlefront 2. And we even we fought against other squadrons, like friendly battles. We fought against each other in so-called civil wars, and that was always so intense. So if it's really about squadrons, as the title supposes, it's gonna be very interesting to see. What the first thing I thought was, I hope it has private matches.
Oh yeah.
I hope so too. Yeah.
I was like, if it's about squadrons and that you can join with your friends in a squadron and fight other squadrons online in multiplayer, apparently that's what this game is about, if everything we know so far holds up true. I really hope they don't make us drop 20 lobbies before we actually find the group we want to play against.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like in terms of like community events and stuff like that, if you do have kind of two friendly squad rivals and stuff like that, you can really go into that, obviously with a private match or something like that would be really, really good. You can have like dogfighting. It kind of depends on what modes they have as well, because I've already got like a bunch of ideas. Maybe it's like just a standard dogfight, or you can like escort mission, like in Fight Squadron, you could sometimes escort a lambda shuttle or something like that to gain more points for your team. But just have like a whole mode based on escorting something or destroying a capital ship or something like that. It's just like the community events and that side kind of things would be really great, but also the potential for customization. And obviously if you're going to have like, if you can like set up squadrons and stuff like that, then there's a lot of detail that you can go into with that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I like the idea of kind of like Battlefront, of having iconic Star Wars moments, but playable, and possibly you can like maybe change the outcome. Non-canon, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And like one moment from the movie specifically that I think could be really cool would be the asteroid chase, where one player can play as the Millennium Falcon, and then you have a squadron of TIE fighters trying to chase them through the asteroids.
That would be really cool.
That would be really fun.
Kind of be like Extraction, except the Extraction cargo is being played by another player, so that adds a little bit more depth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a really cool idea, yeah. I can imagine that as being like Hero Hunt in Battlefront 2015, which was a game mode where one hero was playing and then everyone else was pretty much dying through his hand. But it was fun in its own way, and I can see how having some kind of asteroid fields gameplay moments could give some similar vibes to that mode.
Definitely.
The game has a lot of potential, and I feel like what would be really great as well is if like actual team chat was a thing as well. Whether on PC that's like push to talk, or if it's cross platform, as long as you've got like a headset or mic plugged in, like you've got that kind of that chat as well. Because if it is a squadrons thing, if it's like if it's small scale like 5v5 or something, which I think I saw a leak on, or that could be wrong, I'm not sure, but if it is like 5v5 or something like that, then you can get some really awesome moments with communicating with your teammates. Like you can actually almost set up in a formation, and if if let's say your X-wings, exactly, you could get some really cool, like, if anyone's into kind of like playing game, because there's loads of like Milsim Discord servers out there and kind of role-playing one there when they're actually playing Battlefront. So if you had like 5 versus 5 and you wanted 5 people in as an X-Wing squadron and you're going up against TIE fighters, you're going in there, are red 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 standing by, maintain formation, or just you've got loads of like really cool lines just from the films that you can say, but also just make it your own and really make stories out of it. And depending on the locations you're playing on, you know, whether that's on like above Death Star 2 or the asteroid field or wherever, like there's so much potential in terms of actual storytelling, both single player and multiplayer, but also just for people to create their own stories as well.
On that idea, I don't want to go like super, because we're figuring out what's basically the game's going to be in terms of like a teaser trailer kind of thing tomorrow. But how do you feel about just like big picture idea? We've got Battlefront having the ground combat. We've got Fallen Order covering more single player. Now we have this game that is going to be the tent post for Starfighter Assault. How do you guys feel about that and its place in like Star Wars gaming?
I like the idea of it, but I feel like Battlefront is obviously a very broad game, and because of that, there are certain areas where there isn't enough depth for any certain part of it to stand out on its own. Like they have to, like the Starfighters, for example. Starfighter Assault on its own doesn't stand up as a game, so then they have to go and make a brand new Starfighter game that's 100% Starfighters and have all the depth that goes with that. So yeah, I like the idea of it, but I feel like to make that vision complete, you need to have a ground combat game that focuses solely on ground combat with depth and all that. And a heroes mode as well, yes.
Yeah, I mentioned this on Twitter, but I think one of the things that was like a fundamental failing of Battlefront is it tried to do too much and tried to serve too many sections of the Star Wars fandom, because we've got a very robust Starfighter game mode in Battlefront that didn't see any love or any updates for the majority of the life cycle. And you have these different eras that were getting neglected. You had these different game modes that were getting neglected, like Galactic Assault, where as soon as we had like Capital Supremacy, it started getting neglected with support. So I would love to see EA going forward more specialized in things. Instead of making one game that does everything, make a bunch of games that do something really well. So that's something I'm really hopeful for this game. And I'm really hoping it does well.
The thing is that you have to keep in mind, though, is that originally the plan was a different one. Even like post the loot box fiasco launch, like 2 or 3 months later, Dennis Bramwell did a Q&A on Reddit, and he actually confirmed that there were new Starfighter maps coming, and he confirmed a bunch of other stuff the team was actively working on. For Starfighter, for example, just to give you an example, he said they would not only have new space maps, that they would also most likely have maps that have you fly not just in space, but in air combat as well. That never happened. And if you look at the development cycle of Battlefront, I mean, it's amazing what the team at DICE did with limited resources, but I don't think what we got is what they envisioned at the very beginning, or what they would have wanted to do with it. Vision was probably pretty bold in terms of giving so many aspects of Star Wars gaming a home in this game, but I don't think that was a bad idea. I actually really like the idea. Don't get me wrong, I'm totally fine with getting a Starfighter-focused game. Nothing wrong with that if you're a pilot, but it's a shame they didn't follow through, or they were not able to follow through on what they had originally envisioned, in my opinion. That's just me guessing, of course. And especially as, even if you guys are not Starfighter mains, and even people who don't play Starfighter much will always say that Starfighter Assault is one of the most polished and bug-free modes of all of Battlefront, and Criterion Games really did a wonderful job making it a very atmospheric game, a playable movie almost, in my opinion.
Definitely.
If Starfighters are your thing. And it's a shame that all got to waste with them not supporting it for whatever reason. So I don't think the approach in general, if you ask me, was wrong in making one big Star Wars game to rule them all. And I don't think fracturizing is necessarily the way to go. Nothing wrong with getting a standalone Starfighter game, though. I'm just going to be selfish here.
Yeah, I very much agree with what you said, Sage, right before. Because I feel like on Battlefront 2 especially, you had three types of player. You had the hero players who pretty much spent all their time in heroes versus villains, myself included. Then you had like the ground combat, the troopers of the Battlefronts, who just loved being the faceless soldier behind a clone mask or a stormtrooper or whatever. And then you had people like RogueWolfe who just loved playing Starfighter Assault. And I feel as if those three types of players rarely played other game modes. At least I'll speak for myself. I have rarely played Starfighter Assault and even just trooper modes because I just enjoy my own little section of the Battlefront so much. So I feel like developing, let's say 3 games for those 3 different kind of people who enjoy different kind of games pretty much would be better for both the player base and developers who could just focus on one aspect instead of spreading themselves too thin. So this is, to me, a great move.
Yeah, I really like this move.
Yeah, and you just have like more games. I think that's something that has definitely been lacking with EA having the license. Is we've gotten 4 games, and they've had the license for 7 years? 6 or 7 years?
Yeah, it's about 7 years now. We had Battlefront 2015, Battlefront 2, and then Fallen Order. I mean, obviously there's capital games with Galaxy of Heroes, but
we don't want
obviously in terms of like big AAA titles, then we've got Battlefront 1 and then Battlefront 2. Obviously they're made by the same studio, but then we've got Fallen Order. So we've only had we've had Criterion and Motive work on Battlefront 2 as well, but that was launched and then supported post-launch by DICE as obviously part of it. But it's like we've, in a way, sometimes you might feel like obviously we've had 3 games, but because one was already a sequel to another, yeah,
there's not a lot of variation.
It kind of there's not a lot of variation, and like I tweeted out yesterday saying like, oh, not every Star Wars game has to be a Battlefront title.
Definitely.
And I've actually had people reply to that saying, oh, every game has to be a Battlefront title. So, which is really peculiar because I feel like if every game was just a Battlefront title, there would be a severe lack of creative freedom and just overall depth as well. Because if every game was a Battlefront title, then it'd be like, if it was like because I mean, you can obviously have like spin-off games, like they could easily just call this Star Wars Battlefront Squadrons or something, and it would basically be like it would have the Battlefront name in there, but not like part of the big.
And there was supposed to be a spin-off of Battlefront that got cancelled.
There was, yeah. It was like an open world title, wasn't it, or something like that, or like
from leaks, yeah. It was a kind of trying to be an open world sort of thing, really, but.
Yeah, we've had more games cancelled than come out.
Unfortunately, yes.
I wonder if that, like the fact that it was open world makes me wonder if, because we knew that before Battlefront came out, they envisioned, and you can see this in the files and some of the concept art and stuff, that they were going to have the Corvus as like the Normandy from Mass Effect, where you could walk around and interact with people, and there'd be different rooms and stuff, and you could do stuff. But there would also be hub worlds, and we also saw that with Maz's Castle as well. That was kind of like a hub world for that one mission.
Yeah.
But the idea was to do that throughout the game.
More kind of like how Destiny runs it.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And so I'm wondering maybe if there was a point where they decided that was too ambitious for Battlefront, but not too ambitious for its own spin-off game.
Somewhere caught in limbo.
Possibly, yeah, I think that could work. I feel like if the title, if EA get the license contract extended, then I feel like it would be really nice if EA could actually try and make a proper, in-depth, fairly large-scale open world title where you can actually obviously do multiple things, but just obviously Fallen Order was is open world, but it's very, in terms of its level design, it's very linear, and you have to go on these kind of set paths. But if they could just kind of open the map up a little bit and make it more non-linear, like if you went to Tatooine, you wouldn't want to just go to you wouldn't want to go through just these 3 alleyways. You'd kind of want to try and explore the whole thing. If you went to Mos Eisley, and I just feel like it'd be really nice to have a a title where you
Yeah.
can see that.
That's what I was really hoping for with the city. So it opens up in that one planet where they're scrapping. That's what I really wanted to see more of, like that area expanded. But I loved Fallen Order. It really opened up what Star Wars games by EA could do.
Yeah, 100%.
The only issue with an open world Star Wars game is, and I run into this every time I try and think of an open world Star Wars idea, is how do you define the boundaries on that? Because in Star Wars, there isn't really boundaries. You can get in a ship and go wherever you want.
Yeah.
Why do you draw that? Say you wanted Mos Eisley. Why do you draw that line around Mos Eisley where you stop? And I feel like that can be a pretty big immersion breaker in a Star Wars game.
Yeah, 100%. Like the thing is with like Star Wars is just huge in just every aspect, and with all the worlds and stuff like that. You can't. I feel like with a Star Wars game, you want to go as big and as bold as you can to really fit that kind of Star Wars feel to it. But then at the same time, you've got to be realistic and kind of really think: is this really achievable? And where you do have to draw a line somewhere, and it sometimes it can be very difficult to.
Is this just real life, or is it just fantasy?
I almost started singing. The thing is, one thing I get across quite often, actually, when I post something about Squadrons and formerly Project Maverick, is that there are some people that say, oh, well, it's cool for you pilots, you get your Starfighter game, but I want an open world Star Wars game, and EA canceled 2 of them. Second reaction is, well, happy for you, you like flying and have fun with it, but I wish they would have continued support for Battlefront 2. So in theory, what Sage kind of hinted at the beginning, that if you had like one game for Starfighters, one game for open world fans, and one game for Battlefront fans, ironically, now we pilots might be the only ones who get to have a game that has
flying is for
current supports, while trooper friends or heroes friends will have to make do with Battlefront 2 that isn't getting any updates, and while fans of open world Star Wars game don't have a game actually. So I'm kind of worried a little bit that, like, the general reaction sometimes by people is, well, it's cool Starfighter game, I'm probably buying it, but I want a Battlefront 3.
Yeah.
I want Heroes vs. Villains, the game. That's what I want. That's what I want. We'll start a petition.
Yeah, perfect. I play that as well.
Do it.
Let's boycott Star Wars Squadrons and just go for it.
You probably get more than 50 signatures for that, I imagine.
We'll get about 200 up.
That could be a cool concept, though. Some kind of For Honor style gameplay. I mean, that's always how I envisions the ideal Heroes vs. Villains.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way it plays, it might as well be its own game. Like it's so different from the rest of Battlefront.
Yeah,
definitely. And like it suffers from being connected to Battlefront and the larger scale game modes because of the hero gameplay. Because
the balancing. Oh,
exactly. That's something that has always plagued Battlefront, is the balancing of, yes, this character's like super overpowered with supremacy, but like you bring him over to this game mode and their gameplay just does not match up with a team based.
Yeah, I mean, and it's difficult as well because fair play to Jan, he's done a really good job, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Or the best job that you can do, but it is really hard to balance heroes against heroes and then heroes against infantry, which are much weaker and easier to kill. So how do you make that balanced in infantry modes and hero modes? It's hard, and you end up with these weird balancing issues, like Vader just being Vader. But it's nuts. But if Heroes vs. Villains were its own game, then just imagine that you could have dedicated balancing, proper like maps designed for heroes versus villains, like small arena-based maps.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's heaven for me.
Definitely. Yeah. And so before we go into one of like the how to play topic of this episode, what I'll probably do is like separate this section into its own episode and then do like a specific one later on. But so we've got EA is losing the license in what, 3 years? 3 years?
3 years, yeah.
3 years.
Yeah, the contract currently runs out in 2023, but obviously anything can happen.
A lot of people want EA to lose the license, but I don't think that's a good idea. I think if EA actually looks at itself and is actually able to get over itself and see the mistakes that they made, I think it would be much more powerful, because Battlefront 2015 made very specific mistakes. Battlefront 2 made very specific mistakes that were different from Battlefront 2015. Fallen Order was a huge success, but cut corners in certain areas. And then we have Squadrons, which is coming out, which is a completely different type of game. And then we'll have Fallen Order 2.
What about that?
So if they can take all of this experience and actually run with it and see the kind of content that's really good and go in with another, maybe they sign another 10-year contract kind of thing. If they can take that and go forward with that, I think it would be much more powerful. Either that or open it up completely to where EA can still make Star Wars games and Disney runs it as like Lucasfilm used to be, LucasArts, where they said, oh, hey, you're a developer, want to make a Star Wars game. Oh, hey, over here, you want to make a Star Wars game. If they do it like that, it could be really good too.
I mean, I see why people want EA to lose the license because of everything you just mentioned. But one thing I don't think people realize is that if EA does lose the license and another publisher picks it up, that publisher can't hit the ground running in the same way that EA can. Because EA will have a decade of assets and support stuff, and they have everything there to make Star Wars titles.
And more importantly, experience with the Lucasfilm team, because they are
exactly.
historically very hard to work with.
Exactly. Say if Ubisoft picked up the license, we're going to end up with another period of, say, 5 to 10 years where there isn't that many games because all the studios are still trying to set things up and make all the assets from scratch and set up all those pipelines and everything. Yeah. Whereas EA can just renew the license and just carry on as they were and slowly ramp up production so that there's more and more titles being made. They can open up studios, blah, blah, blah. Like, most people seem to forget that about how it was at the start, and we didn't hear anything for 2 years. Yeah,
it took Battlefront 2015. It took Battlefront when EA got the license in 2013 to Battlefront 2015 coming out. That's 2 years of nonstop development and building up relationships and building up the pipelines, like you were saying, building up all of these things to a game that launched where it was a very small game. Like, people are expecting Battlefront 2015 to be this huge game where it covers all the eras, it does everything right, it does all of these things, but it literally could not have done that because of the time frame.
There was no way they could have done that. It's like if you look at any other studio, say Riot, when League of Legends first came out, it was quite a small game. And then you compare it to now, however many years later, and it's absolutely huge. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing at EA or any other publisher, but it's going to start off with a new IP. It's going to start off small and get bigger as it goes on. And we're starting to see that finally with EA. All of their experience and assets are starting to come together in a way that allows them to create bigger and better worlds and more of them.
Yeah, 100%. Because, I mean, if you look at, obviously, like we were saying, there was a 2-year period where we didn't really have anything until Battlefront 1 came out. But, like, if you look at the first 5 years, and then you look at the next 5 years, so first 5 years, okay, so in 2018, it was pretty much 2018 when Battlefront, was starting to get updates and things like that. And then, 2018 we had some decent updates, but then in 2019, when that kind of, the next period started, we had a ton of updates for Battlefront 2, like really good content, and then we had Fallen Order. And then, if everything is true, then we'll get Star Wars Squadrons this year. So we had Battlefront 2 content last year and Fallen Order, some Battlefront 2 content this year in 2020 and Star Wars Squadrons. And then if, that could potentially go and get some, even more content next year through 2021, And then I think the Fallen Order sequel is rumored for 2022. So then we could see that in 2022 as well. And if you compare the first 5 years to the last 5 years, you can really see how much, like, how time has allowed them to really push on and create even more content. And it would, I think, you know, if EA did actually lose the rights to make a Star Wars game, then I think it would be a big mistake, because again, we'd have another period where all of these, you know, whoever would then have it, we'd have a period of time where we're not seeing anything, and then it would be, oh, here's a game, but then we're not going to see another game in, you know, for maybe 2-3 years, and then it will start to pump out again. But, you know, and I feel like a lot of people have said, like, they don't necessarily have to have exclusive rights. Like, EA could still make Star Wars games, but then other development studios, other publishers can also make Star Wars games as well. Like that, you know, that could be a thing. But if EA, you know, if Disney were like, okay, well, no, we kind of want someone to have exclusive rights, then EA would still be the right choice to go through, because
Definitely.
yes, okay, they have made mistakes, but as Ethan said earlier, like they can hit this next one with the ground running, and they can just power on through and start bringing out more games on a, you know, they can start bringing out games on a more regular basis, you know.
Definitely.
The thing is, though, if you look at the history of the Star Wars games that came out ever since Electronic Arts got the license, they canceled more Star Wars games than they published. And if you think of the Ragtag game that had Amy Hennig being part of it, then we had the open world game that was developed at EA Montreal that got cancelled. Then the Battlefront spin-off that was also developed at EA Vancouver. Did they really succeed? Was it really the right choice? Just throwing it out there. I think the idea, if I read through some of the early press releases recently, because I'm making a video on the history of EA Motive, and in the statements, Disney always said, we want a strong partner who has experience in development and is big as well. That was the punchline. So they can bring out huge content. And Electronic Arts is big, without a doubt, with all these studios they have in their roster. But did this also hurt the development of Star Wars games? If you just look at how many times developers had to go away from Battlefront to help out with Battlefield 5, for example. I mean, that's a DICE thing, but you know what I mean?
I feel like with the cancelled games, one of the reasons why I quite like EA is that they're not afraid to, if something isn't living up to its name, they're not afraid to just cancel it, which a lot of studios wouldn't do. They would just, like, say, Star Citizen, and I know that a lot of people might get really angry at this, but the way it's going, it's clearly not living up to its name. I'll say it that way. And they put themselves in this position where they can't really cancel it, or they're too afraid to, or whatever. Whereas EA are not afraid to do that. If something is a dud, they will just cancel it. They won't just keep at it, you know, for years and years at a time to try and make it better.
It's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time.
yeah, of course. I mean, like there's no telling how much work would have been needed to make Amy Hennig's Star Wars game a success.
Yeah, and her game got canceled twice.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know too much about that. We don't, like, or at least I don't. I haven't read into it. I don't know why it got cancelled or whatever. But it might just turned out to be a bad game, and that's that. That's just how it is.
So what I've gathered is Amy Hennig wanted to make an Amy Hennig game. EA wanted to make an EA game. And they both came at it and tried to do a compromise where neither party was happy, and it just ended up badly on that side of things, to where it just wasn't getting, things weren't getting done, and they had to cancel it. And then they transferred to another. They tried to make it into something else, use those assets, but it just didn't work out either.
I think a lot of those assets ended up in Jedi Fallen Order. I remember looking through the files, and there was a big folder called, I can't remember what the name was, but it might have just said Montreal or Motive or something, or whatever the studio was called. Ragtag, that's the one. That's the name of the... Yeah, there was a folder called Ragtag, and inside of there was a whole bunch of models that they used for Fallen Order. So those assets are getting used. They are still, going on. Amy Hennig still lives in all of those games.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
like
if you look at EA
games.
and think of them as a football club, I'm not a football person, so if I screw something up, interrupt me and correct me, please. So they've
you're
got
talking to
all
the wrong
these star
group.
players, and the star players being the studio. Who in the end is to blame if you don't win a championship? The one single star player or the organization that didn't succeed in, putting the team on the winning track?
Blame the manager.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. And to me, in this comparison, EA is the manager. So
Definitely.
I get what you mean, Ethan. It's totally fine to cancel something and say it's something we shouldn't do. I worked for a very short time in IT as well, and I saw very good ideas getting canceled because, well, they were good but didn't work. And it's always a bold move to do that, especially if you invest the time and money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you have to find ways to make it work and to manage it. And obviously, if what Sage said is true, that Amy Hennig wanted to in an Amy Hennig game, then Electronic Arts, the manager, should have ways to do both,
Wasn't Amy Hennig the top person in that regard, though, for that title? As in...
Yeah, so she was the director of Project Ragtag, and formerly she worked on the Uncharted series.
So she was like that game's Dennis, kind of.
Yes, but even like she was basically the Steven Spielberg of video games. So she's like way up there on terms of name recognition in the developer, and like they specifically got her on there to make like a basically Star Wars movie but as a video game type of thing, and it just ended up being way too big because they brought the actual concept artist from the prequels to work on it. I remember that was like a huge thing.
Just because someone's name, like you recognize their name or they've been good in the past, doesn't always necessarily mean they're going to, strike gold this time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
Ronaldo is going to score for Real Madrid just as he's going to score for Bayern Munich, right? I'm talking about football. We should really shift this to the NBA or something.
I don't know what. All I know is that in football there's feet and balls. Like
Depends on which one you're talking about too. Is this UK football or
Soccer.
US football?
like soccer,
The actual football.
real football. Yeah.
But no, I mean, like, that's an interesting point, but I think, Ethan, actually, you kind of had an interaction with a guy who actually worked on Ragtag, didn't you? And he was saying that had they made the game in Unreal, they probably would have shipped it, but because they were working on Frostbite, they didn't. And I feel like that was part of, obviously...
It's hard to tell, like, if he just meant that in a bitter way, or if he was being genuine about that.
The couple people I've talked to that have like had experience like just in Respawn has said many times if they tried to make Fallen Order and Frostbite, it wouldn't have happened. And like Frostbite's super powerful, but mostly towards visuals than it is for the production of a game, or so I hear.
Yeah.
I feel like because Frostbite's an EA engine, I feel like EA are very much kind of inclined and will prioritize
It's cheaper,
use
isn't
of
it?
that literally over anything. Well, because of course it's obviously cheaper, but it does need to get the results. And if Fallen Order came out and it certainly blew my expectations, and I think it was a huge success, and obviously that was done on Unreal, and I feel like that could hopefully be a bit of an eye-opener to EA as well, and to be like, okay, obviously for the most part we're going to want to use our own engine, obviously because it is cheap so we can cut the costs, but also let's try and maybe because they'll have some sort of a relationship with Epic now as well through the Unreal Engine, they kind of think, well, okay, maybe sometimes we can use Unreal as well. And obviously with the growth that with UE5 coming out in late 21, then that's going to be that could be a big step up, and EA can try and utilize that and I'm sure Frostbite will have this big update as well in the next few years. But
yeah, I saw somewhere the next Battlefield will be using Frostbite 4 instead of Frostbite 3, which is it's a leak or a rumor, so don't put too much faith in it. Here's a question: do you think that Squadrons will use Unreal Engine or Frostbite?
That's a good question. My first instinct would be Frostbite. Motive's a new studio, relatively. I don't think they would have like the pool. Yeah, because they've got founded in 2015. So I don't think they'd have the pool like Respawn would, where Respawn basically said, we're making this in Unreal Engine. Basically, they said, we can show you where to shove it if you have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Because that's Respawn.
Like, Motive is the, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but they were the Anthem B team. They probably don't have that much sway at EA.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know. Like, with the success of Respawn, Apex, and Jedi Fallen Order, EA might have had a little change of heart.
But, EA only found out about the success after it's launched, and
Yeah.
EA Motive Star Wars game has been in development for some time now.
Like 2 years, yeah.
I think it will be in Frostbite. That's
Yeah,
my personal guess.
I don't think that's
I
a bad
imagine it'll
thing.
be in Frostbite, but it wouldn't surprise me if potential future titles weren't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they should leave it up to the developer rather than the people who don't do any development saying, hey, make this thing in the thing we made.
Well, if you look at BioWare, they chose to use Frostbite. They were given the option of Unreal Engine and Frostbite, and they chose Frostbite for whatever reason. Probably money. I guess it was just that, they saw more opportunity to claw back some revenue by using Frostbite.
I think that's about it for this episode of the Star Wars Battlefront podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can find us on Twitter at SWB Podcast, and links to all of the awesome guests in this episode and their Twitter and channels will be in the description of this episode. You can also find us on Instagram at SWB Podcast. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/battlefrontpodcast, or through PayPal, paypal.me/tie-dye-sheep. TYEDYESHEEP. A great free way to support the show is through leaving a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you can find podcasts and leave a review. We'd greatly appreciate it. We love hearing your thoughts on the show as well as feedback. A new thing we are doing, we are streaming every Saturday on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Star Wars Battlefront Podcast. We've had 3 streams so far, and all of them have been really, really fun. The first one, I just streamed instant action while I was figuring out the settings for streaming, but the other 2 are really great. The second one was just me talking about the future of the show and Star Wars games, and interacting with the awesome people that joined on the stream. The third one we've done was with Ethan, and we played all kinds of different game modes in Battlefront, as well as 1v1s from Battlefront 2015. So stay tuned to the channel for that and even more Wayfinder guests. You can listen to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. Wherever you can find podcasts, you can find this show. As always, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.